Welcome to Massive Beers. My name is Matt. We do beer stuff here. New brewery time. A brewery actually you've been wanting to review for quite some time. Alesong Brewing. Out of Oregon. This is their Kentucky Kilt. It is a Scotch style ale, coming in at 12.5%, aged in Kentucky bourbon barrels with vanilla beans. Alesong. I've seen their beers. We don't get a ton of them out here on the East Coast. Actually, I don't know if I've ever seen their beers in Pennsylvania. I might have seen them in New York, but I do see them in Jersey from time to time. They're usually quite pricey. Barrel aged beer come from Oregon, smaller brewery, I would assume. A little bit cost prohibitive for me, so I've never really picked them up. I'm just gonna lie to myself, or lied to myself that lie to you. I actually bought this in Pennsylvania today. I forgot. So yeah, apparently they do make it to Pennsylvania also. And I was just going to a local shop. There's this place that I really dig over in Stroudsburg. I don't get there often, but every now and then I have to dip over there for grocery shopping or whatever. And I pop in, and it just struck my fancy. It wasn't super expensive. We'll talk about price point later. But I was just in the mood for something barrel aged, and this just big ABV, Scotch ale, bourbon barrels, vanilla beans. I picked it up. What are we drinking? Kentucky Kilt, Alesong Brewing and Blending, Scotch ale, aged in Kentucky bourbon barrels with vanilla beans. This is a 500ml bottle. It's 12.5% alcohol by volume, and they are located in Eugene, Oregon. Kentucky Kilt is our malty, deep ambered colored Scotch ale that was matured for nearly a year in Heaven Hill, Kentucky bourbon barrels. A subtle final addition of vanilla beans that blending accents the barrel-induced aromas of bourbon and oak, while hints of ripe fruit and toffee round out this unique and complex barrel-aged blend. Like a song, each beer is our expression. The enjoyment and interpretation is yours. Alesong Brewing. This is actually a vintage 2022. I think they just released this because I actually went online to be like, I didn't see that date on there. I'm like, I wonder how old it is. And it looks like about a month or so ago they released this, and I couldn't find a vanilla variant, so it kind of makes sense. So you're talking about something that's just about a year old. And they talk about actually what's in the beer, or info about the beer. It says cases produced 340, microbes Saccharomyces. Barrels, freshly emptied Heaven Hill bourbon barrels. Special ingredients, Madagascar vanilla beans. Label-wise, I really do like it. I mean, it's very, very old school, classy. Almost reminds me, everything about it from the back, the way the front looks. Very much wine-like. Not hating on it. Let's put it that way. I need a bottle opener. So, I got this old school. Oh, that'll work. Nice little hiss on it, too, so that's very appreciative. Give it a pour and see where we end up. So yeah, first Alesong beer on the channel. I believe I've had a couple of their beers at bottle shares and stuff like that, but I couldn't comment. So it could be my first beer from them also. So take that for what it is. Yeah, that's a wee heavy beer, man. I mean, it's going to be very hard. Well, I can do this. Let's come back here. It's that rich kind of mahogany kind of color. If you hold a light up to it, relatively clear. There's a decent amount of particulate floating around in there. I think you guys can see that now. That's a combination of you can see the stuff that's not floating directly upward. That's all particulate. And it just looks the part of a classic Scotch ale, classic wee heavy, with that nice kind of north of khaki, south of mothball colored head. Just that rich, almost like mahogany mixed with a little bit of orange kind of glow to it. So, let's see, good nose. First thing that jumps out to me, it definitely comes off with a wee heavy vibe. So it has this nice rich kind of maltiness to it, a little bit sweetness, but we're kind of like, I would equate, if someone said layman terms, explain a wee heavy to me, and it would be like, okay, imperial porter, barley wine, somewhere in between. That's kind of how wee heavies kind of come off to me. There can be quite a bit of variance. A lot of people go with like a little smokiness, little peatiness, stuff like that. But that's the base and how it comes off. And that's how this one really does come off for me. So it has this nice rich maltiness to it. It doesn't come off roasty toasty. It comes off a little bit more sweet. So I love that barley wine kind of porter mix. And you definitely get a bourbon barrel in here. It's absolutely 100% there. And you get this nice little bit of tannin, a little bit of wood, a nice sweetness to it. Definite kind of vanilla, and I'll speak to that in a minute, but not a big barrel char to it. So it's almost like a wetter spirit as opposed to more spirit, less barrel is how this is coming off to me. The vanilla-ness comes off really much like just bourbon. It doesn't really have a ton of vanilla beaniness to it, which is kind of counterintuitive to what I just said. Is not a big barrel, more spirit. And usually that vanilla and then the coconut and all those things you typically love about a bourbon barrel is going to be derived from the barrel itself. I think it's kind of just adding just a little bit more vanilla to where that's why the vanilla is coming off that way for me. It's a little bit more barrel, even though the barrel's not big and represented, at least in the nose. It smells really good. It smells really good. It smells like it's going to come off, this is weird to say, thin. You can smell thin. I don't know. There's something about it that makes me think, not that wee heavies are a big, huge, dense beer. You're talking the 12.5% barrel-aged big beer. You expect there to be a viscosity to it. Just the way the nose kind of comes off. It just, for me, it comes up. I don't want to use the word watery, even before I even taste it. But that would probably be, I'm going to kind of future guess how this beer is going to go. Let's not future guess. Let's just dive right in and see what's what. Cheers, y'all. That's tasty. That's very, very tasty. And here's the thing. I do think it's a little bit thin, but it's not out. It's what it is. I need to. You think about barrel age. You think about big. Think about high ABV. You think about barley wine. You think about stout. It's not that. This is not that. This is a wee heavy. And that's the biggest part about like these beers is that it drinks absolutely to a T like a Scotch ale. Absolutely like a tea like a Scotch ale. And has those added components to it. Absolutely added vanilla in here. I mean, the nose let me down a little bit. Maybe it's my nose. I'm coming off a little bit of sniffles. But there's definitely an added vanilla to this. It's not over the top. It's not like some over the top, like, just vanilla bomb of confectionery craziness. But you can definitely tell there's a vanilla added to it. As far as the beer goes, like I said, I felt like it was going to come off thin. It comes off the appropriate mouthfeel of what a wee heavy is. Which is, like, almost like the best way I could describe a wee heavy, I keep making these analogies, and how its mouthfeel is, how it tastes. They very much remind me of Werther's original candy. Not as butterscotchy, but in that realm. And if you've ever eaten, if you ever went on a binge of Werther's, after you eat 3 or 4 of them in a row, it might sound disgusting to some people, but your saliva starts to get this viscosity to it. That it's like a mixture of the Werther's original and just your own saliva, and it has this kind of density to it, and it's more just a mouthfeel. It's actually how the beer, wee heavies tend to come off, and the sweetness and the way they tend to skew for taste wise to me, because I think we all do that. I think we take flavors we've experienced throughout our lives, and when we drink a beer, we associate those flavors with it. I think that's very natural to do, and that's how it comes off to me. It's very much like Werther's original, and it rings very much true with this beer. But when you add that decent amount of vanilla on there, but again, not punch to face, but you're not missing that there's added vanilla to this. On top of that, sweet, malty, Werther's like original kind of flavor to the actual malt base. And then there's this nice, meaningful, purposeful, but not in any form or fashion hotness of a Kentucky bourbon barrel I think it's actually a really, really well done and a really, really smart blend of all the flavors. My first knee jerk reaction when I read labels and they say spent nearly a year in a bourbon barrel, it lets me down a little bit. That verbiage, it really does, because I think a year is a base minimum when it comes to barrel aging in spirit, preferably longer. I think 3 years. We'll get to. We'll circle back on this. 3 years is kind of like, okay, you're making killer stuff. Usually anything less than a year, I'm kind of like wishy-washy on. I think you barrel age this for a year and a half, 2 years. I think it's just all spirit. It loses the beer completely. And this is the not exception rule, but the rule for these kind of beers. Again, you're not barreling. And when I say that, I'm knee jerk reacting, or not knee jerk reacting. I'm defaulting to imperial stout, thick and icky Russian imperial bittering stout, or a big huge barley wine. I don't think this beer should or would be better with epic barreling. Maybe there is. Maybe you make a beefier one, get outside the edges of what a typical wee heavy is. But I think the amount of time that's spent in the barrel is perfect. I think a little bit less. The barrels, the spirit itself, because there's not a ton of barrel there. I think the spirit itself is a little bit too small. I think you go, 6 months longer. I think it's a little bit too hot. Something just made a noise. That was weird. And then, I think it's right in that perfect Goldilocks level of impact. And I don't know if that vanilla bean addition, because I know they made this year's. I saw it on their Instagram. They made this beer. It looks like relatively the same, but without vanilla. So I really want that beer now. I think the vanilla addition is genius, because I think it more massages a bit of barrel. It's, again, not vanilla to the face, not overt. There's vanilla added, but it's such a common flavor component when it comes to a Kentucky bourbon, that I think the addition here just beefs up MSGs, accentuates that barrel, and you have a hard time kind of differentiating where the barrel starts and where the vanilla begins, and I think that works out really, really well. It's fantastic. It's absolutely fantastic. Yeah. As a wee heavy, let's put it this way. Let's cut to the chase, because I think I covered it. Really nice mouthfeel for its style. You keep in mind wee heavy the whole time. Really nice mouthfeel. Beautiful carbonation. Beer is represented. Spirit is represented. Vanilla is represented, but nothing's too heavy-handed in either direction to overpower that. Is this one of the better barrel-aged beers I've had as of late? Yes. Mount Rushmore status? No. There's ones that have done me better. Just, visceral enjoyment. There's just ones that are just, there's four better. At least four better. Probably more. Is this one of the better barrel-aged Scotch / wee heavies I've had? Yes. And in that case, it's Mount Rushmore status. Not even just, I don't think recently, because I can't tell you the last time I had a barrel-aged wee heavy. I'm saying all the time. This is one of the better ones I've ever had. So it's deserving of being up there. Just very tasty stuff. Value and availability. Saw it on the shelf. Picked it up on the shelf. $20. A little north of $20. Or Oregon-based barrel-aged beers. Again, I want to treat myself. So, yes. I'm not going to sit here and say that's a great price point. In a perfect world, this beer would be reasonable, perfect price point. Like, I'm not saying give it to me for nothing. And I want this, between $15 and $18 is where I think this beer should be, as far as price point. And leave you with, if you like what we like this. If you like barrel-aged wee heavies, you will like this. I know it's so on the nose and so no shit Sherlock stuff, but it is very much a wee heavy beer. You see this beer and you say, ale aged in Kentucky bourbon barrels with vanilla beans. I think you can interpret that sentence in a bunch of different ways. Once you put Scotch style ale, I think it very much tells you exactly what you're drinking, which I can't tell you I appreciate. it's one of those things where you go into the review and you start talking about it. You wish it was a little bit more of this, wish it was a little bit more of that, but then you go, oh, it's a Scotch ale, so it's telling me what it is, and it's exactly what it is, and it's delicious for what it is. Yeah. So you really, if you like Scotch ales, we have these, and you like barrel-aged beers, and you're a fan of vanilla, because it's going to give you all the vanilla you dig, unless you're a vanilla addict, then it might be a little bit less than what you want, but honestly, if you're a vanilla addict, you need to find some help. So there you go. Alesong, have you been to the brewery? Have you had their beers? Have you had this beer? Two things. Have you had this 2022 vintage with the vanilla? Have you had this year's vintage without the vanilla? That is a thing I need to know. I need it. I need to try it. If I had it side by side, it'd be perfect, but I really want to try this this year's version without vanilla and see, what's the hubbub, bub. So there you go. Reviewing the books. Hopefully you enjoyed. Down there if you want to talk about it. Put all the other stuff down there so we can talk about it. Hopefully enjoyed the review. Hopefully enjoying a little bit of barrel aged wee heavy goodness. We'll see you next time. Cheers, y'all.